The last month has been a little quiet around here because I have been hyper fixated on the Bonnie and Camille Quilt Bee book. There's a cross stitch pattern in this book. It came out in 2021 is when Fat Quarter Shop was doing a stitch along with this. And then I found it in 2023 and I started it up. I just thought it was so cool to have a quilt in cross stitch form, and I just really loved it. But it has just been an active project for just way too long, and I wanted to be done, and I just sat down and worked on it every single day for a month. And it's really funny because after these 2 years, you can see a lot of progress from the top left corner where I started and to the bottom right where the stitches are cleaner. And I've learned a lot about myself, my stitching style. I really love this project. It's like a companion at this point. You see that I'm stitching in hand now. I started off in a hoop and I had to travel a little too much. I would leave the house and go to doctor's appointments, and it was fun to carry this along, and I couldn't bring that big hoop with me. Plus it was just a lot easier to do quick stitches in hand. But I did find when I was doing the framing step that my tension is a little more rough, like the fabric would weave a little bit at those points just because I'm just all over the place with this. So it is neater in the hoop, but I think the trade-off was worth it for the convenience of just stitching within my hand. And I learned a lot about tie-off stitches, and honestly, like how to bury stitches is a lot more important than when I first started. Especially with these red threads and the navy threads. If there's any of that poking outside of this on the Ada, it's very visible. And now I know that. Since this has been in my hand for years, I know that there's going to be a lot of grime on the cloth. So this is my first time washing a cross stitch. I watched some tutorials. It just seemed like you just use some Dawn dish soap. And just like when my husband is working on a stressful house project, I just agitate the situation about every 15 minutes. So I have it in there and I'm giving it a just gentle little nudging, and I let it sit for about half an hour just so little grimy bits will loosen up, and then I come back to it. My sink is always full. Sorry you had to see that. But yeah, so I just dump out the soapy water and I'm going to rinse off the cloth, and I don't know how to tell. I just wait till there's not bubbles anymore, and I'm trying to be really gentle. I wouldn't want to pull out any threads, but they seemed all secure, especially like as I learned how to tie them off better and hide them in the back. Nothing came loose, and that was a good feeling. So nothing bled. There's a lot of red thread in this project, and I was starting to stress over that because I read online about people having issues. Stark white cloth, red thread, half hour of sitting in soapy water, nothing bad happened. It was totally fine. The project got a little squish from some clean white cloths, and then I put it on my ironing board to dry. I just let it sit there overnight and came back to it the next day. So once it's fully dry, it still feels stiff. I was worried that was from the soap, but it's just the Ada cloth. It was fine. I flipped it to the back. Look at those tiny little stitches. I know you're all curious about the back of cross stitch. This is what mine looks like, and this is from the top when I was inexperienced 2 years ago. I clipped a couple little threads, but honestly, it was not enough. I had a lot poking out. So I ironed that gently from the back. I did flip over and do a very light water mist on some of the bottom, just because that was really held in my hand, and I warped some of the cloth that you can see, like the top. It does matter to be in the hoop, and it keeps it a little bit more straight. I don't know, but like I said, it's a trade-off. So I got a 12 by 16 frame, and this project is I think 11 by 13 and a half. So I trimmed an inch from each side. It's stressful, to be honest, but it's a little bit over. I can always trim off more, but I can't put it back on. And then, after all this time, I just wanted to have that extra little bit. So I have a little more space on the top and bottom. I think I did 2 inches there so it would all fit. And here is my frame. It's just a super cheap frame. It cost me $8.99. And what I do is I took the mat out and it comes with like a photo, like so you can see how frames work. And I flip that photo over so that the white is against the cross stitch. I think no one else recommends that you do that. You're supposed to use acid-free paper, and I don't know what that means. So I just use that just so I have a nice white clean backing. And then I noticed that I left all the plastic on. And it even has a sticker warning you to do that. And then the plastic is on both sides. So I take out my cross stitch again, and then I remove that little peel. So it's from one side, and then I do the other, and try to have really clean hands because this is really staticky. And you're going to see when I put it back in what that static does to the situation. So my cross stitch is not perfectly aligned and I'm not stressing over it. I just want to put it in the frame for now because I'm excited that I'm done and it's finished. And I would hate for this to just sit in a pile of, things waiting for a frame. So I just get a cheap frame. I just stick it in there, but it does bother me enough. Like I'm here, I'm looking at it and it's all done. I'm about to turn off the camera and I see a little bit of fluff. Some of the cardboard from the frame, since it's such a cheap frame, it's gonna have some like little linty messes. So I take my frame out again and I find that and I can't pick it up, but I eventually get it out and I get my cross stitch back in place and then I am really done. I take my flashlight on my camera to make sure there's nothing else because I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be done. And that gets secured back in place. So it's all framed, it's done, and I love it, but I have to warn you, once you get it in frame, you start to see the mistakes. This little triangle right here, I didn't know thread management. I did a poor job of like trying to understand how to organize threads and come back to certain areas. So I left out that triangle and then I have a unfinished stitch right here. It's probably not that bad and no one would know, but there's an unfinished stitch right there. I only have one half of it. I don't know, somehow I missed putting on that extra bit. And then I'm missing 3 stitches on this piece. So that's what I found after the fact. Just so you know, like I'm glad I put this in a cheap frame. One day I'll get the gumption to fix those little issues. But for now, it's just so stunning on its own that I don't miss it. Plus with that little triangle, there's a light pink and I don't think it really stands out because it was already fading out. And here's where it's hanging officially, but it's hard for me to do footage of it because of the glare of the windows across. They make anti-glare glass for cross-stitch frames, and I haven't made the investment. What I'm trying to do is show you the living room in the background and how that matches to the light blue. It's a perfect match. It's amazing. I didn't even plan that, but this is where it's going to be.